Shalom and welcome to another very special edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemen. And joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed, New York City. We are in the Aseret Yemei Tshuva. We're recording this earlier in the week, Tuesday, before Shabbat Shuvah. This is the week of Shuvah, Shabbat Shuvah. So we'll start out by saying Gemar Chatima Tova. Everybody should be sealed nicely in the book of life. And you can hear a little bit of hoarseness. We're all kind of brushing off of Rosh Hashanah. It was a lovely Rosh Hashanah. We'll start out. How was your Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Kalmanovsky?
It was great. It was wonderful. We had meaningful and joyful, and feel like a beginning of a new year, and feel it was hopefully at least a little bit deep. You know, I'm feeling great, feeling fine. A couple people did test positive for COVID, so let's hope that I remain healthy like a horse.
Yes, wonderful.
Otherwise, you know what they do with unhealthy horses.
The glue factory for you, buddy.
How was your Yontiv?
Mine was great. I was with 3 of my children in Lancaster, where my wife, Carol, is a spiritual leader. And since you mentioned it's Tuesday, a happy birthday to Carol today.
Hey, Mazel Tov.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And it was really a very nice Rosh Hashanah. Nice services. It's fun to listen to Carol preach. And ironically, they have a rabbi who serves as the cantor. So it's kind of a mixed role situation. But it's very good. And it was very Hamish, and I found it very meaningful.
Nice. Well, I also had a lovely.
How are things at the Highland Park Conservative?
I lovely Rosh Hashanah. I had 3 of my daughters with me, and my mother as well, Kim and Oliver, and everybody. We were all together. It was lovely. We had lovely services, lovely meals. You know, I always like to say that if the weather is good on Rosh Hashanah, you know, there's hardly anything you can say that will make it bad. You know, I think the service as well. I was happy with the things that I talked about. You know, and hopefully they got to where they got to. In fact, you know, I based one of my talks on our conversation last week, which was the emotional parts of it, and you know, we the 3 of us talk about preparing sermons and, you know, drashot and all that stuff, and how coming up to Rosh Hashanah, you know, have so many different ideas, and then of course you trash everything. This was my experience this year. I had things I worked on, and the day before, a couple of days before, actually a few days before, I was like, nah, this is not gonna do it.
So, Elliot, did you open any doors with your speaking?
Did I open any doors? What do you mean?
Gnug.
So we got you know, I used the topic of emotion because of music, and you know, how some of the music really shapes the experience, and so it's with that idea of you know, what's the content of Yom Kippur. So I'm gonna, you know, we'll turn to both of you and ask you some content of the day. We could talk about the text. We're going to not talk about Shabbat Shuvah because this is going to be our talk before Yom Kippur. But although there's plenty to talk about in Ha'azinu, but we're going to leave that for this year. But in terms of content, what you know, things that are drawing you in both the idea of Yom Kippur and the liturgy and the experience. So Barry, I'm going to start with you and just see if you can, you know, choose something either in the machzor or any part of the day that or any part of the experience, emotionally or literarily or ideologically, philosophically, the meaning of tshuva. I mean, you know, where are we going to start with this?
Well, I guess the best place for me to start is at the beginning with Kol Nidre, because I think that is one of the most identifiable musical pieces of the season. And what makes it so spectacular is that it doesn't seem to go at all with the text. The text is a rather arcane legal text where we annul our vows for either the past year or the coming year. But it's set to this music that is haunting and I think draws one in to the somberness of the day. You know, it's the beginning of the fast. You've just come to shul. And I think I'm not the only one who has already started to count how many hours till the fast is over, even though by now I realize that the fast is virtually over when I wake up in the morning because we're halfway done by then, which I appreciate as an adult. I didn't appreciate that when I was much younger, of course. But there's something about that text, and we were talking before the show, Elliot, and you were talking about repenting not just for sins of the last year, but for sins that have carried over. And the text of Kol Nidre, in a sense, speaks to that we have these issues that come back every year, and we don't really quite know how to deal with them. So we set them to this haunting music, which kind of makes us forget about the words we're saying, and we just are sort of mesmerized by the sound of the music and all the memories and associations that it provokes for us. And, you know, it gives an advantage to people who are older because they have so much more to draw upon.
And Jeremy, what do you have? First, you know,
Well, I have a
associate.
hard time. I have a hard time picking because, you know, I mean, it's been so long since I have not worked on our holidays. That I can't even really guess what it's like to sit in synagogue for a long time if you're not like really working. And I feel some gap between, you know, me and the congregants because they're sitting there, you know, I'm like it's really intense for me, and there's not a moment, really, honestly, it's not a moment of boredom, but I'm going to guess that probably that's not true for other people in the like, you know, a little bit of when's this going to end thing. I never feel that because there's so much going on. But in terms of the arc of Yom Kippur, this is like, it's a funny thing to say. This is my favorite holiday because it's so emotionally intense. I do feel the sense of crisis as I have to confront. If you do it right, you have to confront the ways in which you're going off wrong in your life, and the things you regret, and the shortcomings you come to recognize in your personality, and all those things are true. And so that's deep. And I totally, at the end, at Ne'ilah, when it's resounding and rocking, feel the real liftoff. And I do walk out of there feeling a brand new forgiveness and a brand new opportunity to be the way it ought to be. So the whole arc is a big thing. Barry, I'd say one thing about Kol Nidre. You say, you know, after you say the Kol Nidre rituals, you know, Nislach l'chol adav bnei Yisrael ki l'chol ha'am bishkaga vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. In the voice of Moses, you say, forgive these people. They just made mistakes. They weren't trying to be bad. They just made mistakes. L'chol ha'am bishkaga. And God says, vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Okay, you're right. I forgive you already. But then you have to do the work of the next hours to really, you know, reflect. How about you in the consider?
I'll tell you, you know, I also love the day. It's a profoundly joyous day in the ways that you describe, which is that there's nothing that gives you a sense of joy and uplift than being forgiven, or the idea that that's a possibility. And you know, think about it in the sense of, you know, if you've done something terribly wrong, and that you need to restart your life a little bit, or you need to rekindle a relationship. And here, of course, we're talking about a relationship with God, but we're also talking about, you know, our interpersonal relationships, and that the possibility of having a new beginning with that, I think, is very, very profound and very, very joyful. The whole day is you know, extraordinary. You know, I have, Barry, the same sense as you with regard to the music of Kol Nidre, and I also think, you know, it's an almost impossible service, especially to preach at. and it has to do with just where everybody is. People have generally rushed a meal. They've come to shul, they rush to shul. People, during the week, I don't know how it will be this year because it's on Sunday, but people are generally, a little tired. There's anxious, and I don't care if you're Martin Luther King or you're the best orator in the world, but I got my chops. I can hold myself, next to some good people, and boom, it's you got to say after the speech, Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarti bi nishmati. A lot of people have that. I always think that maybe we should do a sleep study. At any rate, it's very hard, and I appreciate how hard it is. So I keep the themes a little bit, I don't want to say lighter, but more accessible. I go so often to Pirkei Avot or Pirkei Avot style of talking, because people are looking for wisdom, for something that's accessible to think about. I just want to share with you an idea that I'm thinking about, because it ties to tshuva, which is, the whole idea that we're balancing mitzvot and averot, and I have the Rambam here. Let me put this in front of you. Kol echad ve'echad mibnei adam yesh lo zechuyot ve'avonot. Chapter 3, number 1 of the Rambam's Hilchot Tshuva. Everybody has their positive and negative attributes. Misha's zechuyotav yiterot al avonotav tzaddik. Whoever's attributes are more than their despicable attributes, they're tzaddik, and vice versa. Okay, and so it's that kind of thing that I think about, which is it that simple? Is it that simple? You just have to do.
5149 makes you a
5149, and in the own parliament of Elliot Malamed, I have 51, votes in favor of you're a good guy, and 49 that, okay, you're just, is it that simple, or is there more complicated? And Maimonides, like, come on, Ramba, you're not, obviously, it's me. I'm not interpreting Maimonides properly here. There's much more.
There's got to be some distinctions between, because the 3 books, right? The 3 books that are there, the mythic 3 books, one for the tzaddikim gemurim.
Yes.
So the one for the totally righteous, or the reshaim gemurim, or the totally wicked, and both of them are sealed away immediately on Rosh Hashanah. And then for the benoniim, for the middle ground people, which by definition is everybody, 100% of the people are in the middle books. Everybody feels that, because if you didn't, you wouldn't
come to shul.
Feel that intensity of the high holidays that you're in the middle zone. So there's got to be a difference between the tzaddik gamor and the people who are just like, they're 51 over 49. How many people in the Canadian Parliament?
I don't know at this point.
But if think about it's perhaps not unrelated to, like what we can make the metaphor. Listen, if you got 61 seats in the Knesset, if you got a solid coalition at 61, you can do anything you want.
So there you go. Is our moral life simply an aspect of majoritarianism in your soul? Right.
Well, I think that there's another image that, if we think of the scale where we have our sins on one plate and the good deeds on the other plate, what we're really looking for, I think, most of the time is a kind of balance. Right? If we commit a sin and now the scale is tipped one way, we want to put enough good deeds to balance it, I think. And that's what we call justice. So the way that Rambam presents it is that we're going past justice. And maybe that's the sense of divine mercy that we're looking for. That mercy is something a step above justice, because there's more good to it than mere justice.
So in the Unitana Tokef, that poem, which is the poem of Rosh Hashanah. We say it on Yom Kippur too, although its original habitat was Rosh Hashanah. It got bounced over. And your throne is really established, not through justice, but the reason that you are God is that you can establish your throne through chesed, through kindness, through mercy.
Yeah. All right. Let me throw another idea at you, because I'm meditating on it, as it were. The prelude to the Ashamnu. Okay, the prelude to the Ashamnu prayer, which is Ashamnu Baga. So it talks about. I'm going to read the Lev Shalem translation. Our God and God of our ancestors, hear our prayer. Do not ignore our plea. Our God and God of our ancestors, we are neither so insolent nor obstinate as to claim in your presence we are righteous without sin. All right, already I'm lost. Okay, the Hebrew I'm much more comfortable with, which is, Al titalem mitchinatenu. Don't ignore our pleas. En anachnu azeh panim. We're not that arrogant to say that we are righteous and we've never sinned, but we've sinned. And here's my thing, which is my dilemma, which is a lot of us come into these days thinking, we're decent people, we're good people. Well, come on. I mean, we never hurt anybody. We certainly haven't murdered anybody. That we know of. I mean, we're decent, good people.
Hope that much. Yeah.
Why do we need to engage in this? And the Machzor is saying to us, that's arrogant. That's arrogant. You really need to kind of look hard at yourself, because you know what? You're not as good as you think. That idea, you're not as good as you think, that's hard to say, and it's hard to, it's certainly hard to say on the pulpit, because it makes people feel bad.
But you have plenty of congregants who want to say it for you.
You're not as good as you think. Well, you're certainly not as good as I think.
Exactly. Well, what do you think about
the line that you just said? The line that you just said, to me, this is a very, very effective, very, very powerful, and even in halachic normative terms, very, very central line. The phrase, we are not so righteous as to say that we, tzadikim anachnu v'lo chatanu. And given what you just said, that sort of little mathematical metaphor of Maimonides, God, we are not so righteous as to say we're even 51-49. We're not so arrogant as to say we're even 51-49 and we really haven't sinned. Aval, which the semantic of aval, in modern Hebrew, it just means like but. I went to the store, but there were no cookies. But in biblical Hebrew, classical Hebrew, it's got a little bit more of a range of, it could be however, it could be but, it could be indeed and in truth. You have to say, I think the way I feel about it is, you have to say the phrase, you have to hear your own voice say the phrase, I really am righteous, and then you have to say, aval, no, it's not true. Like the possibility of the real best version of myself, aval, that's not true. There's a gap between what I would like to hold out as an ideal and what I actually have as the real. And so I feel that line is the, emotionally speaking, the most, that's the piece of liturgy that gets the job done for me in a big way.
Okay, so then, but are we hiding in a little bit under the plural here?
No, I don't think we are at all.
Okay.
I think the reason why we say the sins in the plural, just to follow up on some of the ideas that we've mentioned already, is because even if we have not done the particular sin, it's likely that there's someone in the congregation that has. And we are not better than the worst member in our congregation. We are, in a sense, the worst member of our congregation. We need a sense of humility to expand, to understand that the sins that we think are little might be quite great to someone else, especially the person whom we sinned against, right? We always have this idea, I think, in the back of our heads that it's better to be forgiven than to forgive.
Yeah.
And Yom Kippur is trying to reverse that, trying to get us to see that it's actually better to forgive than to be forgiven. And one of the ways we do that is that we try to identify not only ourselves before God, but with everyone else that we're davening with. We're speaking before the show about the emotional power. And I think one of the things that we sometimes overlook is what gives the most power to Yom Kippur is that generally it's the day when we have the most Jews in synagogue. And we derive power from saying these terrible things about ourselves, even things that are exaggerated and we know don't pertain to ourselves individually, because we say them in a community. And there's a certain comfort in knowing that we are sinners, but we're in a sinning community, and yet there's hope for us.
I want to just go back to a point that we just touched on, which is some of this is trying to reenact an earlier moment of repentance, and the moment of repentance for the Jewish people is the golden calf, and it is a kind of pilgrimage to that moment in our minds where the people sinned with the gravest sin possible, idolatry, having just been given the Torah or the Ten Commandments, and they violate that, and it's broken, and there's an incredible shock, incredible feeling of horror and brokenness, and the main lines of liturgy that we recite during Slichot on the Yom Kippur service, the 13 attributes, these come from the moment of the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf. It almost seems absurd that we would go back there, but there's tremendous wisdom in this, that we're making this pilgrimage to this early place where we broke something so irreparably and we were forgiven. And so we are saying to God, basically, okay, remember that moment? You did it there. It doesn't get much worse than that. So do it now. How do you react to that? And what going back to antiquity for a sense of renewal or anything related to
well, because and one is just struck by the literary power. The story comes in Parasha Ki Tisa. It's just right after the Ten Commandments. It's right after the first law code of Mishpatim. The tabernacle is being built, and because it is such a tremendous failure, and Hashem is portrayed as showing the most intimate, holds Moses in the cleft of the rock and passes by, and it's such an intimate little moment. It's exactly as you said. The worst pieces of our history, they can also be forgiven, and that's the paradigm in which we live, and that's what gives you hope and faith not to give up on yourself. Like, one of the things that I think is really good about Yom Kippur, and I would imagine that practicing, like serious Catholics have this on their own way in their regular confessions, is if you focus on all the bad things that you do, you have to focus with a real self-critical, self-examining eye on your failings. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite, and you're never really dealing honestly with your shortcomings. But if you focus on them too much, you're going to give up on yourself and conclude that you're worthless, and you may as well stop trying, and you may as well just give over yourself to your Yetzer Hara, because there's no way to get restarted. So what this does is to say, yep, we're going to have to be honest, we're going to have to be real and focus on what went wrong. But we've already said at the beginning of Yom Kippur, Salachti Kidvarecha, I've already forgiven you. So now let's just do the work. So I feel like the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, provides the paradigm that can be fixed, this can be fixed.
So what I would add is that one of the central points of the Egel HaZahav is God's profound disappointment in the Jewish people. And yet he cannot abandon us. And it gives us a way to live with our own disappointments, because God lives with his disappointment, which we call B'nai Yisrael, and we have to learn with our disappointment, both personal and in a wider sense. And the golden calf, I think, comes to remind us every time we confront it that there is disappointment, but there's also transcendent disappointment greater than we can sometimes imagine. And yet, even then, God cannot turn away for whatever reason that might be. And we have to accept that.
All right. So I look at the clock and we're quickly running out of time. I want to talk about the prayer that we end the Musaf with. I think we also end we end every prayer, the Nila ends with Hayom, 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 Hayom. V'nemar, Hayom, Hayom, Hayom. We have a very beautiful song for it. I don't know what you do in your shul, Jeremy. You have a nice melody for Hayom?
It's the Hayom, Hayom, Hayom.
It's one of the many
Hayom.
traditional ones.
Many traditional. Okay, so Hayom Te'amtzenu, which we translate as today, strengthen us. Hayom Tivarchenu, bless us today. Hayom Tigadleinu, exalt us. Hayom Tidrashenu Litova, seek our well-being. It's such a beautiful prayer in the sense that first of all, it's an aleph bet, and our machzor only has like 8 lines of it, but there's a whole alphabet of these things, and it's worth it to dig out and give a class on this. Tichabdenu, tilabevein, tichabdenu, should give us respect. Tilabeveinu, I love that word, tilabeveinu with a lamed, which means give us heart. So in a way, these tismechenu, right, which is give it, just help us out, right? Ta'anenu, answer us, and on it goes. And of course, anytime there's an acrostic, it almost invites you to add, whatever you want in there. It's saying to God, we feel small today. We feel weak today.
I feel a teeny bit different on this one point. I mean,
okay, I need the courage to confront flaws in me. Go ahead now. You go.
No, the only thing I was going to say about first of all, in our prayer books, like many of the prayer books, many of the prayers are alphabetical acrostics because, of course, people weren't holding books and they had to remember, and it's a good way of remembering if you have to do it alphabetically. And so, like kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim. Yeah, that there were 22 items in there. We have aleph bet gimel, and then onim, potchim. So we have 5 of the 22 still in our prayer book, but there were others. But I want to focus on the word hayom, which is this is a special day, special, exciting, holy in the sense that it is not ordinary. It is intensely special, intensely filled with religious power, and I feel like when we sing that, because it's not part of the regular Shabbos liturgy or not part of the Tuesday afternoon liturgy, it's connecting the davener on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to like a couple of days. It's probably true. Like we sometimes joke about the 3-day-a-year Jews or something like that. It's probably true that there have always been 3-day-a-year Jews. And the reward is that if you come and you participate in this most special day of the Jewish people, you're going to walk out strong and blessed and exalted and sought out and every other letter that you can come up with.
Right.
So what I would say first is that there's a folk wisdom in only doing 6 verses, because everyone knows it's time to move on to the next thing. And there's something to be said for that. But the other thing I would say is that this is kind of a follow-up of the message of Rosh Hashanah, which is the crowning of God. Why do we crown God on Rosh Hashanah? Because we want God to act like God, but not the God who inspires fear, but the God who inspires love. So we turn to God at the end of these services and we say, God, this is a day for you to be you. And we need you and you need us. So we're in this together.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's a I mean, that prayer is about just seeking that connection. And I think the music again, the congregational melody for that, the fact that we're all singing it in a kind of robust, full-throated way, it signifies, yeah, we've come to the end of the service for sure. But
Uh, yeah.
it signifies togetherness. We're together in this.
Another one that does this in a very similar way,
Yeah.
which is just hugely resonant and hugely popular, and all synagogues I've been to, but in the one that I've been to now for the last 23 years, Ki Anu Amecha.
Yes,
You know,
we're going to talk about that. Okay.
we're at a time when, people are peeling away from religious identification, and we're worried about Am Yisrael in the United States, and fewer people are coming. And when I have a pretty large sanctuary, and on Kol Nidre night and Ne'ilah, but also on the day part of Yom Kippur, it's a little bit less attended, but to have a big loud room filled with people saying, Ki anu amecha v'ata Eloheinu. We are your people. You are our God. We are on this team. And that's just a really stirring moment.
It's a glorious moment. It's really, and the music again, it expresses that total joy and that total togetherness. I mean, and even the open syllables of it. There's lots and lots of longing in there, and lots of exclamation and rejoicing in there. And it does take us on the arc of this great emotional experience. We've talked about this before, but here we're going to come to a kind of conclusion. So you get to the final Ne'ilah, and it's emotional. I mean, it's emotional in ways that are just not, we're not able to, completely describe. It's relief, of course. The end of the day, it's an exhausting day. We've gone on a lot of emotional journeys. We haven't even touched, Yisker. I think for many of us, and of course for many of the people that watch us and listen to us, there are people in their lives that are not there. And when you talk about Kol Nidre and the music and memory and the haunting, part of that is I'm here with people that I'm not here with anymore. I mean, we live in living communities where the people that have been next to us each year are not there, and we miss them terribly, and it's painful, and memory, and yet I rejoice with that memory. I rejoice with the fact that I at least can hold on and be that, be living in that moment too. But let's live in the moment where we're coming to the conclusion of it, and okay, so Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elohim, and here we're saying it all. It's the vidui that you say on death. Shema Yisrael, Baruch Shem Kavod, and Hashem Hu Elohim. Hear, O Israel, blessed is the name of God, and God Adonai Hu Elohim, 7 times. And if we've ever had to recite that over someone who's dying, you don't get a Tekiah Gedola at the end of that. But that's what we're doing.
Well, not in this world.
Not in this world. The Tekiah Gedola is not to announce that you've arrived in the world to come. I guess, I don't know, but it's profound. It's just the greatest moment. It's one of the great moments in the Jewish year, the Tekiah Gedola. I mean, in addition to the people running for the exits, too, because they're okay. So on that note, first of all, we have the journey of the year. This is the end of the year. The Yom Kippur is the death of the year and the beginning of a new year. Although Rosh Hashanah has begun. People who are very loyal to this show and this podcast, and the 3 of us have written in and shared their thoughts, especially before Rosh Hashanah. So let's take a moment to thank them for their encouragement and for their great wishes. We really, really appreciate the honor of being part of your lives. It really is. We're I have to say, and you guys will concur. I mean, we're really humbled by the fact that for so many people, this is a part of their weekly life. This is a part of their preparations and all of that, and that's very, very humbling for us. We're very, very honored to be a part of your life in that way, and we thank you. We thank you for allowing us in to share this conversation, to share words of Torah, words of tshuva. So we would say, if we've done anything to our listeners or viewers, if we sinned against you, we should talk about that another time.
No, I like to say, if we've done anything to offend you,
To offend you.
you're just too sensitive and you need to lighten up.
Right. How could we? Okay. In the meantime, so Gemar Chatima Tova, may you all be sealed, that the year that is ending end with all of its vicissitudes, a new year of good things, a year that lays out for us a path of all the beauty and the meaning and the joy of Jewish living. And let's hope that these days ahead, Yom Kippur, its culmination, be as meaningful for all of us as we have described it for us.
So just want to add a heartfelt prayer that this year will be for Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, both an Ir Shalom and an Ir Shalem. May it be a city of peace and a city of completeness.
Amen. Amen. And with that, everyone, Gemar Chatima Tova, Shana Tova. See you all next month for Sukkot. Okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye.